Welcome to A Moment of Zen. Time to sit back and relax as model, actress, mentor, and supermom Zen Sams takes you on a sexy and wild ride, covering the latest in film, fashion, pop culture, cryptocurrency, fintech, cannabis, and entertainment from the millennial mom's perspective. Here's your host, Zen Sams.
Hello, my beautiful friends and loyal listeners. It's always a pleasure to spend my time with you on the airwaves. Thank you for listening and interacting with me on social media. That truly does make it all worthwhile. Please make sure to follow me at Zen Sams. That's Zen with an X, not a Z. And remember that we're now on TV. Tune in at impact.kpmedia.tv and catch a moment of Zen on the Impact Live channel Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern. All episodes are now available on demand. We have such a great show lined up for you today. In our influencer segment brought to you by EP63, we're featuring Nikki Giavasis. She's an entrepreneur, author, and mega influencer. Today, she's here to share her horrifying story about mold poisoning and how it almost caused her permanent damage to her health. She's currently recovering and detoxing in Mexico, and she's coming on today straight from her hotel in Playa del Carmen, the House of I. Now, in our Business and Buzz segment, we have returning contributor Kyle Wool, president of Revere Securities, and he is joined by Joe Collins, a U.S. Navy veteran, South LA native, and Republican frontrunner for California's 43rd Congressional District. Today, we're chatting about how the current hostile U.S. political climate is affecting the U.S. markets, all the way from stocks to real estate and to all the in-betweens. In My Digital World segment, brought to you by Tempest Network, we're welcoming back our regular contributor, CEO of Tempest, Shahal Khan, and today he's joined by our good friend, Nikki Giavasis. She's an Indian-American serial entrepreneur and investor, founder and CEO of Luna PR, headquartered in Dubai. Today, we're chatting about how GameFi is becoming the next Silicon Valley for investors and what the cryptocurrency tie-in is all about. And in our Crypto Frontier segment, brought to you by CCP Digital, we are featuring Chris Pulley, CEO of CCP Digital, and he is joined by his really good friend, Craig Muir, founder of DigitalSelf. And we are chatting all things Metaverse and digital selves, not just your digital self and mine, but everybody's. And we're talking about how brands need to approach the Metaverse to survive in Web 3.0. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with our influencer segment with entrepreneur, author, and mega influencer, Nikki Giavasis. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
If you've missed out dining in New York City for the past year, it's time to visit the legendary Vice Cucina. Located in the heart of Midtown, Vice specializes in blending delicious Northern Italian and American cuisine with dishes such as the incredible taglione lobster, ravioli masala, ossobuco, and pappardelle al telefono, along with many other mouthwatering offerings. You deserve a great night out. Call Vice Cucina 212-757-2600 or online at vicecucina.com.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Now, up in just a few minutes, we have our influencer segment brought to you by Vice Cucina, and we're featuring Nikki Giavasis. She's an entrepreneur, an author, and a mega influencer. Today, she's here to share her horrifying story about mold poisoning and how it almost caused her permanent damage. Now, she's coming on directly from her retreat in Mexico, where she's currently detoxing. So a big shout out to Pulley, the House of I Resort in Mexico, Playa del Carmen. Now, as she gets settled into the broadcast room, let's chat hidden hazards in our environment. Now, if you've ever dealt with a mold infestation, you might have had some concerns about the effects of the exposure it had on your health. Perhaps you even wondered if you needed to take steps to purge mold's effects from your body. Well, some hazards in the home are easy to see, like a loose electrical socket or torn carpet on the stairs, but others are harder to spot. And some, like mold, are invisible in the very air you breathe. Molds are microscopic fungi that grow everywhere, both outdoors and indoors. And they're a natural part of our environment, and they thrive in areas with moisture. Molds spread by releasing spores. Now, mold becomes a health risk to people when they inhale these invisible spores. And these spores produce a substance called mycotoxin that provokes a strong immune system response in a lot of people, leading some serious health risks. Now, with many people naturally being able to rid themselves of accumulated mycotoxins through bodily sweat and waste, others can't handle the total load. When that happens, the individual can become very sick and high levels can cause symptoms that mimic the common cold. Now, mold can also trigger allergic or asthma symptoms in some people. So everyone reacts differently to mold, and your personal sensitivity to it will influence how quickly you develop symptoms. And here to chat some more and give us insight is Nikki Giavasis. Welcome to the show, superstar.
Hello.
Tell me, what has brought you all the way to Pulley, the House of I, which is a natural, forward-thinking beach enclave in Mexico's premier award-winning progressive wellness and spa resort. It's a little sanctuary, if you will. Tell me about your process and what brings you there.
Well, I became sick from mold poisoning, and it's been taking me so long to get well that finally, when I couldn't breathe or think anymore, I was losing my memory. I knew I had to do something drastic, which was the first thing is you have to leave the environment. So I had to leave the environment completely.
Talk to me about what led you to suspect that mold was causing your health issues.
Well, I started noticing that when I would leave town, or if I would leave and stay at a hotel, or if I'd leave and go to my daughter's house, I would feel well. And then when I would return to my home, I would get really sick. And I was actually filming a movie, and I couldn't remember my lines anymore. And I used to have a genius IQ, so it was kind of difficult when my brain wasn't really working like it used to, and I couldn't remember simple things.
That's so terrible. I mean, at this point, a lot of people are suffering just like you, and they don't even know it. And the most serious problems, caused by mold are caused by small molecules called these mycotoxins. What was your home an old home? What led you to really look around in your environment and look under the hood, so to speak?
Well, it wasn't that it was old, it was that there was previous water damage and it wasn't completely remediated properly. So when they don't get every section, that mold can grow and spread through the home. And I think that's what happened with my place. They didn't get all of it.
Understood. So what were your symptoms other than your brain fog and, some of the more alarming ones? Were you feeling lethargic? What led you to really take action, and what does the detox process look like?
Yeah, I was getting really bad headaches, and I never get headaches, and I was completely lethargic. I started also getting really bad inflammation. Like my body was probably 25 pounds bigger than normal. So it's like hard to speak, hard to access words. And then the inflammation in my brain was affecting everything, but I could see it in my stomach. Like everything was just completely swollen. Like it looked like, I can't even describe how bad it looked. It just looked very huge.
I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Well, obviously, your body's inflammatory reaction is telling you that there's a foreign invader that needs to obviously you need to rid of it naturally. Now, when you look at the timeline, how long till symptoms subsided after you moved out?
They still haven't subsided. Actually, sorry. I wish they'd subsided, but I think there's got to be another part of the process where I have to do a lot of infrared and hyperbaric and a lot of just detox cleanses to really get it out of my system, because once it's in your organs, it grows in there and it spreads through your bloodstream. So it's in my skin. Everything's just dehydrated, and it's not out.
And what medications are you currently taking?
I'm not taking any medications right now. I'm trying to do things like with natural remedies, a lot of sea moss and things like that. There is a protocol from Dr. Richie Shoemaker, and I think I'm going to start that. But first, I'm going to do everything I can here as far as a wellness protocol.
Yes, of course. I mean, you're at a really good place. They pride themselves on relaxation, detoxing, and ridding yourself of, exactly that toxicity. Another interesting thing is the duration of exposure to mold. So similarly, right, the duration of the one-time mold exposure matters versus if it's something that you've been living with in your home. Obviously, that affects a lot of your outcome and how serious you're going to react. The proximity to mold, right? It also depends on how close you are to the actual mold, because we know that the proximity affects how much mold you've been exposed to. So from this point on, how long have you been dealing with this timeline?
It's been about since October, on and off. But especially from basically New Year's to this past month is when I got really sick, because I had mold in the past, and I think that's why my immune system is more sensitive to it, because there's some people that aren't sensitive, but there's a quarter of the people who are sensitive, and once you've had more than one exposure, it hits you a lot harder.
Of course, of course. And over time, we know for a fact mold exposure can cause more severe effects like increased risk of upper and lower respiratory symptoms, chronic sinusitis, fatigue, even so much to go as far as organ damage. Then you have Legionnaire's disease. And then, of course, the development of asthma in children can also be as a result of mold poisoning. Now, I know that there's a mold poisoning test that people can do. What method did you use to be able to figure out that your body was suffering?
Well, you mean the mold test in the home or a health test?
In your body, right, the body.
Oh, I got a blood test and I got some other testing. So they actually do a swab in the nose. It's really very similar to COVID, which is pretty crazy because it's something you can't see and it's such a similar reaction in the body.
Interesting. Yeah, the best testing methods to utilize are a urine mycotoxin test and a home environment test. Of course, mold testing is also, going to be able to allow people to figure out if they need to vacate their home or not. But I'm sorry this had to go through you, but thank you for spreading the word and coming on, especially from Mexico. I know that you're there to relax, and I just want to wish you all the best to get better.
Thank you. Today's day one, so hopefully by the time I leave, I'm back, better with the food here and the environment. I think I'm going to get well.
Yes, of course. The House of Palmay, the House of definitely check them out. They're in Mexico, in Playa del Carmen, and you have to check out Nikki Giavasis. She's a mega influencer, a published author, an entrepreneur, and a dear friend of the shows. Nikki, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Guys, check out Nikki Giavasis official on the gram. That was our influencer segment brought to you by Biche Cucina. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Revere Securities. Revere is committed to building a relationship of trust in which they work closely with you to help you define your objectives, explore alternatives, and choose the financial and investment strategies that are most appropriate for you. Go to reveresecurities.com.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I am your host, Zen Sams. Up next in our Business and Buzz segment, we have a returning contributor, Kyle Wohl, president of Revere Securities, and he's joined by Joe Collins. He's a U.S. Navy veteran, South LA native, and Republican frontrunner for California's 43rd Congressional District. Today, we're chatting about how the current very hostile American political climate is affecting the U.S. markets, now from stocks to real estate to all the in-betweens. This affects your bottom line and mine, as politics have the potential to impact the stock market somewhat. Why? Well, because political actions like regulation and laws have an effect on companies and on their fundamental performance. Presidents appoint economic advisors and fill positions like the chair of the Federal Reserve, and economic policies and the direction of the interest rates, which are all set by the Federal Reserve, also exert an effect on companies, a domino effect, so to speak. Now, these actions then have an impact on the stock market. Then we have media. All news that influences the economic and business environment matters to the stock market as well. The performance of oil company stocks, for instance, improved on the election of former President Trump because his campaign platform favored traditional energy companies over alternative energy, such as solar power. So it's all part of the bigger picture and actually one big ecosystem. Too bad none of them can get along. And here to chat some more are Joe Collins and Kyle Wohl. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you for having
me. Yeah, thank you, Zen.
All right, Joe, I'll start with you. Let's talk about these rising prices and the economy. So rising prices and the economy and the war are all factors affected by political motivations that are actually affecting our bottom lines. And inflation is on everyone's mind these days. Everything from spiking gas prices to increased construction costs is putting a significant damper on consumer spending. And as we know, rising prices also impact home prices. If wages don't increase as fast as inflation, would-be homeowners may end up renting longer. Now, all these problems will continue to keep the U.S. in a housing shortage, an already painful national supply problem that has been continuing for years and shows no signs of improving fast enough. What do you say to this?
Well, I'll tell you that, in my opinion, I think that the rising cost in gas inflation, that's due to bad economic policy on the Biden administration. I mean, cutting pipelines that we use to have energy independence, cutting leases on land when it comes to energy production projects, and all that contributes to the inflation. Now, when you talk about war, I think the only bad part about the war is that we're taking billions and billions of dollars and giving it to another country when we could be taking that American taxpayer dollars and putting it back into our own economy. But it's clear from what we see that this administration really doesn't care about improving the quality of life for Americans. This administration has proven that they will destroy America to help another country. And from what I've seen, just a year ago or 2 years ago, Ukraine was one of the most corrupt countries in the whole entire world. The way they launder money to other countries when it comes to sex trafficking, I mean, Ukraine was the hub. Now we're giving billions of American tax dollars to this country when we should be taking care of Americans.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And, Kyle, I'll kick this one back to you. But when you taking everything that Joe just said, we've always reminded people that it's important to note that the government and the Federal Reserve do not directly set mortgage rates, but they certainly influence them. For example, during the 2008 financial crisis, the Fed bought up mortgage-backed securities and government debt in the form of treasury bonds. This program was known as quantitative easing, and it consequently increased the country's money supply and encouraged banks to lend without as many parameters. And the result was lower mortgage rates across the board. But on the other hand, when the Fed is called on to maintain economic stability in times of inflation, it will set policies to pull money from the supply, which means borrowers will likely pay a higher interest rate on mortgages. What do you say to this?
Yeah, there's there's a lot of factors that go in, and Joe is absolutely right in everything he just said. When you start to bring in the Federal Reserve and mortgage rates and interest rates, they have a longer tail. And the tail has to do with what happened in March of 2020, right? So when COVID hit the economy, whether we reacted properly or overreacted, that's in hindsight right now. But the Federal Reserve aggressively tried to stimulate the economy, knowing that a large portion of our workforce was going to be out of work due to the shutdowns, not only in the United States, but the global supply chain. So once the new administration came in, they continued to pour money on top of this, not so much with Federal Reserve money by quantitative easing and things of that nature, but to continue to put money into policies for people to stay at home and not get back to work. And that truly exasperated the issue that we're talking about today. So that put us in a situation, we were already in a bad situation, but the economy was coming back to continue to throw more money. And thank God we didn't do the Build Back Better, because we'd be almost like the Weimar Republic in Germany right now, like the chairman of FedEx said the other day. We would be in a horrific situation. But the Fed is being forced right now due to a confluence of events, whether it be these bad policies of continuing to tax and spend, the unfortunate war that's going on in Russia and the Ukraine, and what Joe also mentioned with our economic energy policy, which is just nonsensical whatsoever. When a time when you have gas at $5 a gallon to not have the Keystone Pipeline open is just, to me, mind-boggling. So the Fed has no choice but to try to offset inflation. And we're in a bad situation right now. And it's going to be tough to get out of between now and the election. And hopefully people like Joe and some of the other people on his side of the aisle can wrestle back control of the Congress and the Senate and stop the policies that we're currently dealing with.
Yeah, and because I do believe that a lot of this is politically motivated, and I'll throw this one back to you, Joe. Governments, obviously, this segues beautifully into my next train of thought, but governments influence the economy by changing the level and types of taxes, the extent and composition of spending, and the degree and form of borrowing. So governments directly and indirectly influence the way resources are used in the economy. Do you feel many of the White House's choices are politically motivated? And more so, do you feel that governors are affecting their overall respective markets?
When it comes to the policies that the administration is pushing in regards to the stock market, I'm not even 100% certain if it's politically motivated, because what I see is that you got people who are right who want to be so far right, and you have people who are left who want to be far left, and nobody's coming to the middle. I think what you're saying is a Joe Biden and a Democrat Party who hated President Trump so much that they're doing everything to destroy everything that he put in place to make our economy great. And so that's what I think I see right here. And I'm not necessarily convinced that it's politically, but I do know that it has to be personally. And the people who are feeling the repercussions of these terrible policies are the American people.
Yes, our bottom line and our pockets and our bank accounts are draining faster than you can say go, and nobody likes it. Kyle, at this point right now, and at times, we've heard this over and over again, but Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and her team have disapproved of the way top White House aides have downplayed the risks from inflation and dismissed it as a short term, when in fact it has lasted for months and we are continuing to see this trend. Now the administration is saying, well, while we face additional price pressures like Russia's war in Ukraine, the U.S. economy is on strong footing and we expect inflation to abate over the next year. What's your professional opinion?
It's really hard to know when inflation will abate. Inflation can be the worst thing that can possibly happen to the economy and the financial markets. But also, I like to study history, and we're all students of history, right? Historically, we're still at a pretty low point on the interest rate curve. So I don't want people to panic and think the stock market's going to crash. We're already down 20% from the highs in the S&P, which puts us on the verge of a bear market, right? But historically, interest rates, the average around 3 to 3.5%, so pretty good for the overall economy. I think the markets will calm themselves. I don't see any impetus for the markets to rally between now and the elections. But I do think once people realize that the Fed, and I think the Fed has to lead this, not the politicians, if the Fed gets to the rates somewhere comfortable and they say, okay, we think inflation is starting to tame, it's starting to temper, I do think you'll start to see some volatility pulled out of this market where you don't see up 600 points one day, down 400 points the next, or down 1,000 points and up 600 points. So hopefully that will happen, and then hopefully we can get some luck with the war in Ukraine, because I do think if that war can slow down, that could give a pretty good boost to the overall economy, especially when it comes to commodities and soft commodities such as wheat.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is affecting every single household, every single business, every single market across America. It's a terrible ripple effect. All right, Joe, this is a very fitting question for you. And as Ronald Reagan might have put it, here we go again. History may repeat itself. 42 years after inflation helped Reagan sweep into the White House and return the Senate to GOP control, today's surging prices are now threatening once again to upend a Democratic administration. And President Joe Biden and his fellow Democrats in Congress are desperate to avoid the fate of President Jimmy Carter, who was ousted after just one term. Now, Biden so far has had little success in either figuring out how to douse inflation that's running at a 4-decade high, or even convincing voters that it wasn't his $1,400 stimulus check that acted as the catalyst to this disaster of an economy. What are your thoughts here, Joe?
I really feel like this right here. It's not even just the Biden administration. I mean, you got to look at the politicians that we have in office. I think the average age is like 69 years old. These people are literally taking us back in the days with the type of policies that they've been pushing. So I hope to see a whole brand new slew of young people getting involved in politics and taking our country in the way that it needs to go. Because, I mean, you look at all the policies from the Democrats in California with our open borders, with, the surplus that we automatically have after giving, hundreds of billions of dollars to other countries and illegals. And then you look at the Biden administration that is literally killing the United States energy platform. We definitely need better. We need better politicians. We need younger politicians who can actually see into the future and stop living in the past. Because I mean, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. And that's what these politicians are doing. They're so old. They don't have the foresight to see into the future, to see what the younger Americans need in order to be successful adults. And they're really crippling our future.
Yeah, they really are. And to your point, it's not necessarily inflation is inflation. And maybe Kyle, you could pipe in here, because perhaps the biggest problem for Democrats is that there's little Biden or any president can really do about inflation, right? It's really the Fed that has responsibility for price stability. And the central bank is currently mapping out the steepest interest rate hikes since 1994. But that motion is ushering in its own dangers, and a growing number of economists, Kyle, are now warning of a recession in the next 2 years. What do you say to this? You have about a minute.
Yeah, I mean, there's a high probability, right? We've put ourselves in a horrible situation, like I mentioned before, where we just continue to print more money and spend more money. And now the Fed has no choice whatsoever, but to try to fight inflation. And the only way to fight inflation is to raise interest rates. You could go back to Volcker in 1980. I mean, they broke it I don't think we're going to have to go to 18% where your CDs are paying you 21%, your mortgage rates are 25%, but they have to fight it. Now, hopefully, again, we could get a little bit of help from Ukraine and Russia, but it's going to be hard for the next probably 6 months. But I am very optimistic that we can get it under control, especially if people like Joe and his colleagues can take back the Congress.
Love it. Love it. And with that, we are officially out of time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for such a great segment. It's so enlightening speaking to you. Kyle, always a pleasure. Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Guys, you definitely have to check out Joe Collins. Head to his website, joecollins3.com, and then head to Revere Securities, reveresecurities.com. That was our business and buzz segment, and that was our returning contributor, president of Revere Securities, Kyle Wool. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by CCP Digital, bringing you a view from inside blockchain, cryptocurrency, and NFTs. Introducing the latest Blockchain Heroes series, Retro Rebellion NFT collectible card packs from the Nifty Company. Available January 2022. Find out more online at ccpdigital.com.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I am your host, Zen Sams. Coming up in our Crypto Frontier segment brought to you by CCP Digital, we're joined by Chris Pulley, CEO of CCP Digital. They are a decade-old digital advertising agency with very unique access and knowledge in the blockchain and cryptocurrency industries. Today, he's joined by his good friend, Craig Muir, founder of DigitalSelf. Today, we're chatting about DigitalSelf, but not just yours or mine, everybody's. And we're talking about how brands need to approach the metaverse to survive in Web 3.0. Now, the metaverse has taken 2022 by storm. This futuristic world is the latest buzzword in business. Everyone relied on video calls and the online channel during COVID-19. Brands moved to digital platforms to connect with consumers. This period led to a boost in AR and VR usage to virtually try out products. And in some ways, the metaverse is an extension of the virtual, augmented, and mixed reality technologies in use today. The metaverse, though, is a little bit more complex. It combines AR and VR tech with social media, live streaming, cryptocurrencies, and gaming platforms to basically create a more advanced virtual world where consumers outfit their avatars and explore. And here to chat some more is Chris Pulley and Craig Muir. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So, Chris, the promise of this better, connected, shared, holistic 3D space could further transform brand experiences and take online shopping to that very next level. And advanced technologies in the metaverse could add dimension to the online experience, recreating the interactions and emotions associated with this in-person experience that we've been talking about. And in fact, digital consumers are much more interested in using virtual tech for that very reason. Talk to me about DigitalSelf and how it's revolutionizing the metaverse and paving the way for brands.
Wow. Web3 and metaverse, in our world, Web3 would encompass metaverse to some degree, as definitions are still coming together. But the idea of brands coming at Web3 in multiple different strategies, right? So many of the large brands are even looking at Web3 and metaverse as advertising ability and to, showcase something new and exciting for their existing audience to be participating in, showing that they're a leader. So the idea there on the big brands is they need to build the entertainment and build the attractions on why somebody would have some submersive experience. And then all brands are looking how to monetize in the Web3 space and how to go about it, and then how to connect and the technology. And maybe even more important is the culture of Web3, just the idea of how people are interacting. We had Web 1, and that's where we could read stuff. We had Web 2. Now we're doing commerce with each other and across the net. Now we're in Web 3, an entirely global connected audience with decentralized marketplaces to connect and trade directly across global lines. And so to understand how, let's say, you say big brands, even a US brand would enter, they're just going to be looking for the right strategic partnership to make sure that they have the tooling to bring their product to the market, utilizing technology to increase value and knowing how to talk to the audiences. We've found over months and years now that if you're talking to an audience that has no education in the space, it's probably better to just tell what you're bringing without telling all of the NFT and blockchain and metaverse, where if you're talking to people in the industry, you need to make sure that they actually know the technology, how it works, and how you're going about it. So it's a tricky space for brands at this point in time, and we're just been so excited to be working with DigitalSelf because we believe the vision here is next
quite unique.
level,
So this brings me
next level.
So this brings me to a really good question for Craig, and it's about DigitalSelf. So Craig, if you're a business owner looking to get into the metaverse, if you're a content creator looking for a platform to get more control over your creations, if you're a customer looking for a cool place to hang out, DigitalSelf kind of solves these issues. Talk to me about the vision behind DigitalSelf, and is this affordable for brands?
Yeah, for sure. Over the past 5 years, we've been looking at all the different aspects and how to add value to the fans, to the users, but also how to create a new revenue stream for businesses in the metaverse. So creating a digital twin for the brands and businesses in the metaverse where they can be monetized in 24 hours, but also giving the end user the experience, something they've maybe never experienced before in their life, whether that's a game, a football match, or a certain situation experience that they may never get, So we feel like DigitalSelf is the right fit. We also created tools to make it easy for people to kind of edge them into the metaverse with a mobile phone device we've created. We also create NFTs and 360 experiences. But we feel that it's a very, very simplified concept we've created here for the brands and businesses.
I think, listen, there are very few organizations designed to harness the power of extended reality and really to manage this chaos and commerce of the different metaverses to help consumers and companies navigate, the emerging omniverse. But DigitalSelf really does harness, extended reality to create this harmonious media and, commercial experience, so to speak, for people and brands. And I love that you guys are solving the chaos of the multiverse and you're turning this chaos into a seamless experience. Chris, I'm going to throw this one to you. So many brands are really focused on building equity among metaverse pioneers, but activity is shifting towards commerce, like you said. And interest in digital assets and cryptocurrency spiked in 2021, just last year. We have Burberry that partnered with Mythical Games for an NFT collection in Mythical's flagship game, and Coca-Cola auctioned its first NFT collectibles last year. Then you have beauty and fashion companies that have been the biggest players in the metaverse so far. The products, makeup, apparel, accessories, and so much beyond are really just natural fits for this digital environment as advanced technologies really enhance the virtual try-on experience. What should brands, from your perspective, digital marketing, you are the CEO of a very successful digital marketing analytics agency, what should brands be preparing for? And in your opinion, is there a lack of expertise and proper infrastructure in this space? You have about 2 minutes.
Yes, and yes to the end of that question. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of infrastructure still, and it's an exciting place to be. And so when looking at each one of those brands that you named, or you look at all the brands, every brand, it's all about building the relationship with their audience. And so each execution, each strategy is going to be very unique to the brand and the audience itself. And so speaking of metaverse and a virtual reality mindset, then the clothing brands is a great place to be thinking, because now I can put on a headset and I can try on clothes and I can see what they look like. Those models are just so exciting to bring those immersive experience. It's very similar to what got me so excited about the vision of DigitalSelf. I've told this story a few times. Just imagine that, let's say my grandfather is on his deathbed in the hospital. right? And the nurse brings him the headset, right, and puts it on him. And he's able to navigate and on DigitalSelf and walk right into a major soccer stadium, for example. And he can watch the event live as if he's there at the event and all the real people. And yet he's an avatar experiencing it through VR. Sits in his seat, looks to his right. He could see his son sitting next to him. Very near future, his son will put on his AR glasses and look to his left, and he'll see his grandfather or see his dad. Be like, hey, Dad, you made it just in time. Johnny's about to go in the game. And father, son are watching a live soccer game with the grandson there. That's what moves me. That's the technology creating the intimacy. So if brands are, should be thinking along the line of that story, how does the technology really bring intimacy between their brand and the audience and the fan base of those brands?
And to evoke emotion, you're right. And then you hit it exactly. You pinned the tail on the donkey.
Meaning emotions, money. I mean, you got to have something because there's a lot of going on in the world and people's attention. So usually those two things seem to happen, but it's the good side of the technology. And DigitalSelf is really a difficult business to communicate because it's literally, I consider it Shopify for Web3 and Metaverse.
There you go. Let's hear a little bit more from Craig, because I just want to be mindful of the time. But Craig, brands are going to have to really now embrace this Metaverse that Chris and I and you have been talking about to reach up and coming shoppers like Generation Z, right, who are really shunning traditional mediums in favor of gaming or social platforms. In fact, these younger consumers who use online games and video, for social media, for streaming and socializing, are really laying the groundwork for the shift towards Metaverse platforms. What is the most important thing you're aiming to address with a platform like DigitalSelf, and how simple is the monetization process on your platform?
Yeah, it's very simple. We're creating virtual spaces for these brands and stuff to have a digital twin, but also a real focus for us, and a key focus is the AR component as well. So brands like Louis Vuitton could basically have an AR experience outside their shop, and communicating with the people in the streets, bringing, antagonizing people in. So we're creating a whole physical world, metaverse, but also the virtual world as well. And you're making it simple, like I said, very simple, because we understand people get scared when they hear the word metaverse, but we're using traditional technology to kind of slowly merge people into the metaverse, and not kind of throwing it in their face. But yeah, it'll be very, very easy to monetize. They'll have their own space. They can charge what they want. And yeah.
It's giving this access to the business and the brands on a platform to allow them to deliver the experience in the entertainment. We've been talking in the entertainment industry for some time. In a story like a comedian like Chris Spencer could put a 20-minute act on in his living room and film it and stream it right to the DigitalSelf servers, and then turn it into an NFT, 20-minute NFT segments. He could sell 1,000 of them for $500 each, and he makes $500,000 in his living room in 20 minutes. And then the fans get access to stuff they wouldn't have otherwise received. There's just so many opportunities because the back office for the business runs like a Shopify and then produces the experience to the front end that the customers really enjoy.
You said it. Well, listen, we are out of time, and I wanted just to thank you for bringing on Craig. What a great, innovative company DigitalSelf is. Craig, thank you so much for piping in here. It was a pleasure having you on.
I appreciate it. It's great to be on the show. Thank you.
Absolutely. Chris, always a pleasure having you on, my darling.
We appreciate you.
All right. Guys, definitely check out DigitalSelf. Head to their website, digital-self.com. So digital-self.com. And also check out ccp.digital. That was CEO Chris Pulley, and that was our Crypto Frontier segment brought to us by CCP Digital. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Tempus, the next generation of the engagement economy, allowing people to make money on their data and earn cryptocurrency for the time they spend on things they already currently love to do. With Tempus, brands will have the ability to pay you directly for interacting with apps, watching videos, playing games, and more. Tempus, the time is now. Engage and earn.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Welcoming back to My Digital World, brought to you by Tempest Network, is our regular contributor, CEO of Tempest Network, Shahal Khan. And today he is joined by the beautiful Nikita Sachdev. She's an Indian-American serial entrepreneur and investor. She's also the founder and CEO of Luna PR, headquartered in Dubai. They are an award-winning PR and marketing agency that focuses on the fintech and Web3 industries with expertise in NFTs, crypto, and blockchain. Today, we are chatting about how GameFi is becoming the next Silicon Valley for investors and what the cryptocurrency tie-in is all about. We'll also chat about how the United Arab Emirates is paving the way for all things Web 3.0. They are both coming on in just a few, but as they get settled into the broadcast room, let's chat. Now, if there's one thing that can be said for anything remotely connected to the internet and a computer screen, it's that if it's salacious, and that's me being polite in my mom terms, or if it's a video game, it's probably going to survive market turmoil. Now, the video game industry is currently priced at approximately $180 billion, with the GameFi sector making up 21 billion of it. Now, if Web 3.0 is about to disrupt the industry as Web 2 did in the 2000s, then venture capital fund managers have a lot of reason to pay close attention to the gaming sector. GameFi isn't just another opportunity for these VC funds. It's changing how and who gets to invest in new projects. So what happens when you open the GameFi ownership economy to a gaming industry that can amass audiences larger than the Super Bowl? Well, you get a new class of creative entrepreneurs and Silicon Valley VC funds very eager to invest. And here to chat further are Shahal Khan and Nikita Sachdev. Welcome to the show, superstars.
Hi, thanks so much for having us.
Hi, Zen.
Shahal, so nice to have you on. Nikita, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an honor to chat with you today. All right, Shahal, this is quite interesting. Last year, Andreessen Horowitz, which is a private American venture capital firm, invested $4.6 million in a leading gaming guild. Not an enormous amount in relevant terms, but with a $2.2 billion crypto fund in place, the venture capital firm is actively allocating. Now, this is a largely untapped economic opportunity in emerging markets that will clearly provide jobs by building a virtual economy in the digital world. And this sector is making us all rethink and redefine employment. Is this the rise of the creator economy by default from your point of view?
I think it's going to have a big part of it. And I was just in Dubai where I met Nikita, and I was with several people in the UAE government. And, they're doing amazing things. Like, Abu Dhabi is going to release a sovereign-backed coin, a stable coin very soon, backed by a massive amount of their capital. The exact amount, I'm not going to say, because obviously they're going to be, doing it soon. And, they'll be talking about it. The government is also releasing regulations for exchanges and digital assets that can be moved from digital wallets to exchanges to different platforms. That means that people are going to be able to earn on different platforms and then exchange those assets in terms of earning. So you need regulation. You need a platform with liquidity. And I think from what I saw in the UAE, it's going to be massive, and they're going to be leading that charge. I was very happy to see what Nikita is doing on the PR front. And there's a really cool metaverse that's going to be launching soon called the Star Metaverse that she's going to be heading up there. That is taking sports, it's taking fashion, it's taking celebrities into this one metaverse. And it's going to allow these people and people that engage with them to engage and earn on that platform. So I think capital is going to come in surrounding the sort of areas where there's a sort of I would say a condensation of all these activities.
Interesting, because the more, if you really think of it from a big picture, the more people that come into these play to earn communities, the more value for those coins. So, it's no different from traditional equity in that regard. The more people that buy Apple phones over others, the more value investors give to Apple. So, there's always the risk that Apple becomes the next, BlackBerry, so to speak. But all of these blockchain games are communities, and many of them are set up so players can earn. And of course, cryptocurrency is at the center of it all. Nikita, I want to get your point of view with respect to the blockchain market. So the blockchain market is still in its early years, essentially, and the NFT games alone generated $2.3 billion in revenue in the third quarter of this year of 2022. So the overall gaming industry is set to reach $203 billion by this year. And we know that the United Arab Emirates is at the front of a lot of Web 3.0 activity. What do you say to this? And are investors eager?
Initially, Dubai was the UAE was just like any other country where they were skeptical about getting in. But I think Dubai is really trying to be at the forefront of technology and innovation. So I think once they realized that blockchain is so much more than cryptocurrency, they realized that they should start thinking about how to implement it in several different areas. NFTs is one use case of blockchain. Cryptocurrencies are another use case of blockchain. And now we're seeing a lot of government entities actually implement blockchain within their ecosystems. So, for example, we're working with the Museum of the Future, which has recently announced that they will be NFTing the panels. The Museum of the Future is a very iconic building here in Dubai, and it has the ruler of Dubai's words kind of transcribed on the panels. So it's very artistic. It's very meaningful for the country. So they've decided to NFT the actual panels of the museum. So people here can feel like they actually own a piece of history, like they own a piece of legacy. That's just one use case of it, but there's so many use cases and so many benefits of implementing blockchain.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And if you look at the statistics, and Shahal, you could pipe in here, Dubai stated in March of 2022 that it had enacted a new cryptocurrency law to oversee the activities of digital assets and cryptocurrencies, as it really is striving to become a Web 3.0 powerhouse. And the UAE intends to establish a Dubai Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority under the new law, which will be in charge of regulating blockchain-based virtual assets. Shahal, I know you're a big fan of regulation. What do you say to this?
Well, I've always said that you need regulation to a certain degree to have digital assets become global. And I think the UAE, broken up in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and also RAK, Ras Al Khaimah. I was honored enough to meet the Emir of Ras Al Khaimah before I came back. They're kind of positioning themselves in different regulatory aspects. And when you combine all three Emirates under the UAE, you have almost like a base where investors as well as entrepreneurs can choose different parts of the emirate based on what they want to achieve. So Abu Dhabi is really leading with sheer capital and a market where you'll have a backup for your assets with capital, real stable coin capital, let's say, behind it, allowing people to be able to be safe in terms of their valuation of their actual currency not plummeting. Dubai is innovating with allowing entrepreneurs a very easy environment to set up and start their businesses. RK is going into sports betting and gaming, which is allowing people to come in a regulated environment and do gaming and sports betting, which is extremely innovative for a country that is within an Islamic framework. So if you put all three together, you're really getting the capability for the entire universe to be regulated and sort of safeguarded from let's say risk, which is very important for this to take off.
So some investors, guys, they see the blockchain game world merging with the metaverse world and becoming its own economy. There's a real opportunity for metaverse economies at this point to empower their player bases across the globe in a way we really haven't seen before in gaming. And it's one of the things that blockchain games seems to be doing, making viable digital economies that are for players by players. Nikita, what do you say to this?
So, yeah, I mean, I feel like the gaming world kind of introduced the metaverse in the first place. So I don't really see it as like emerging into the metaverse. I see like gaming was always something like the metaverse, but it's definitely more immersive now. You can put on an Oculus, you can play with your friends, you definitely feel like you're more involved, and it has created an economy, like you said, where you can also get involved and purchase things within the metaverse in an NFT form. So you really own it. You can earn money via cryptocurrency. So it just makes gaming a lot more realistic.
Shahal, yeah, I couldn't agree more. It makes gaming realistic and it's solving real world issues. Shahal, what are your thoughts here?
I think that it needs to continue to grow in terms of, it's just the beginning of it. So development of games across the board, and also development of actual, I would say, metaverses and workflows that allow people to come in and participate. For example, charities, education, but gamifying those aspects where there's a program within the metaverse where people achieve certain goals to build something together that can also come into the real world and do benefit. They're actually creating equity value and they're earning it behind the coin. That's really going to become, I think, the super force for this as an economic tool. And it'll really now separate platforms that we have today that are not data sovereign, and really get new platforms that are giving people ownership of the data and their work and compensating them for it. And as you know, Nikita has always said, it's all about community, and around their communities are going to be formed and they're going to support each other. Simply put, I think that's the future.
That is the future. And when you look at GameFi, GameFi is expanding and maturing very quickly. Games are moving into a wider range of genres, such as these role-playing games, right? And first-person shooter games that have this crazy mass market appeal and are really designed from the onset to deliver this PlayStation-like gamer experience. Now, what we've seen is over the past year, GameFi has grown by 2,000% in the first quarter of this year, before the Ukraine war and really inflation caused sell-offs in the markets. Blockchain games raised about $2.5 billion in venture funding. Now, I don't know, will that go kerplop? What is your expert opinion? Nikita, you go first.
No, I mean, I definitely see like GameFi is huge. So at Luna PR, we also have a VC division, Luna VC, and some of our most successful projects that we've invested in have been GameFi projects. And another thing I just want to add to that. So just about UAE, the investors here are very much interested in any Web3 projects, especially GameFi. So much so that there are actually places here where you can put on an Oculus and go into a metaverse and actually experience it, which I haven't really seen in any other country. So I feel like people here, investors, have a lot more to relate to. I don't think this industry is going to flop at all. I think it's going to grow bigger.
I couldn't agree more. I am a huge enthusiast. Shahal, what are your thoughts on this?
I think that there's, as we come out of COVID and God knows, what other headache that continues to come onto our sort of economic and geopolitical scene, we have a tremendous amount of population that just don't want to go back to work. And they don't want to be, having menial job, sort of income in the Western markets, as well as the Asian markets, in themselves. They have other opportunities. They're going to pay them more money just being on these metaverses and creating content. So I think we're going to come out of what has happened during COVID and have a whole new area of economic and job growth. And I think this is going to be one of the main areas.
Well said. Well said. You hit it right on. Guys, we're really out of time, but it's always enlightening having you on. Nikita, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure. Shahal, always love having you come back on as a regular.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Thanks, Nikita.
That was My Digital World, brought to us by Tempest Network. Please check out Nikita Sachdev at Luna PR, on the gram at lunapr.io, and make sure you check out tempest.network. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Hi There, a creative community exploring the culture, craft, and science of cannabis. Hi There believes that we have a collective responsibility towards eradicating the stigma, misinformation, and inequities surrounding this plant so we can unlock its true potential for all. To become involved and find out what all the excitement is about, download the Hi There app from the App Store and Google Play. Hi There, HIGHTHERE.
Well, that's a wrap, my dear friends. Remember to join me every Saturday night from 9 to 10 p.m. or go to 710WOR.iHeart.com/A Moment of Zen. Remember that we're now on TV. Download the KP Media TV app on Roku, Amazon Fire, or Apple TV, and make sure you tune in at the Impact Live channel Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern. All episodes of A Moment of Zen are now available on demand. Thank you for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure being your host. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. And remember, happiness is the only thing that multiplies when you share it.